Hi, this is Terry from Go to Life. It's great to partner with CLO. We offer a different approach to nutrition that energizes you naturally. It starts to bring out your best in minutes. Our customers come in all ages and fitness levels. Some have been with us since we started in 2010. Many athletes have become champions on our game plan. When you wake up to how much your body is loving our stuff, you don't go back to sleep.
We're knocking at your door. We won't take your bullshit no more. We won't go back. The truth is just like on the crazy. You can't stand in my way. We ain't moving, no way to stay.
Okay, I'm going to jump right into it. This is our special guest. This is our lovely doctor, but let's bring on, here he is. I'm going to move you to this one. We've set it up especially for you. There you go.
Good morning, both. How you doing?
Good morning to you. Above me is Dr. Paul Oosterhuis. He was the first doctor to be suspended for daring to question certain pharmaceutical products. And now you've joined the chorus.
Welcome to the ranks of the deplorable, David. We've been following you closely.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it's a thank you for both having me, by the way. I follow both of you as well, and it's a privilege to be on the show today. I don't think I'll be far behind you, Paul. The tribunals in October. I'm being charged with some heinous crimes of promoting ethics and safety and evidence-based practice, helping vaccine injured. Real blasphemy, really, if you think about it. But what they're doing, the regulators in this country, they're playing dirty games, so they don't take you to the GMC regulators and argue the data. I've just been going through my block list today of all the UK doctors that failed to debate me. If they've got the data to back them, very easy to shut those crazy anti-vaxxers up, debate them, and put them back in their box, hey? But they don't take you for that. They find all sorts of spurious claims. So I'm down for bullying, harassment, online incitement of hatred, which is essentially calling out the UK doctors that have been spewing lies to big audiences on TV, such as, these vaccines are single vaccines, 100% protection from hospitalisation and death. I mean, that's just ridiculous, isn't it? Doctors making claims like that, making claims of 100% safety in pregnancy, for example. So I've called this out, and they cry victim, and that's what they've done, and they've banded together these high-profile doctors, and sadly, it's a 15-day trial, 15-day trial in the north of England. I've got to go there and live there for 15 days because I don't think Harold Shipman had 15 days trial, to be honest with you. But
can I tell you though,
Michael, they've got if I win this case, they've got 2 or 3 trials in the background for doing vaccine exemptions, which they've called falsification of medical documentation for money, which is me doing vax exemptions for free on the principle of first do no harm. That's my medical reason. And the ethical principle, it's having to educate my doctor friends that bodily autonomy is actually a thing. And so, these crazy, and that's, like I say, been filed under falsification of medical documents for money. And they've got some other backup things as well for things like GDPR breaches that they claim for me, just, doing redacted screenshots of patients who've had 7, 8, 9 jabs and have had COVID for 7, 8, 9 times, and some of the things I'm seeing. So yeah, they've got a few backups, and NHS England too. So plus civil litigation. So fellow reprobates in the room today.
Yes, well,
I
there
just wanna
seems to
say-
be
go
a,
ahead.
a ramping up of the persecutions. I mean, I just saw Ryan Cole also lost his privileges. Meryl Nass is under attack, and she dropped her registration 20 years ago and hasn't. And they're coming after her because she's got an inchoate ability to re-register. So they wanted to sign a document to say that she will never re-register. So, this is part of a global campaign, I think, Dave. This is.
I said I'll pull out my license. So I don't want your license. I don't need your license. There's better places to be in healthcare now. We're setting up lots of cooperatives really in holistic healthcare. But so I don't really need their license. I said, can I hand it back? But because they've started the process now, my name's going to be dragged through the mud, and it's very prohibitive to my colleagues because of so many taps on the shoulder since I put that video out a couple of weeks ago. I actually resigned that day from the NHS because the practice were refusing to have the jabs themselves, the staff, but they were still administering them. And they were just setting up the spring booster program, and so can't keep up. And the vaccine injuries were rolling in, and ultimately, they're getting the wrong doctors here. The doctors who are on TV claiming all this false information, the poor doctors who are having the balls to speak up, and it really does have a prohibitive effect. So, I found that a lot of doctors have contacted me, doctors, nurses, dentists, physios, paramedics, corroborating what I'm seeing and what I'm publicising. But making various excuses from the usual, reputation, career, pension. My question is, where's the retiring doctors here? The ones who've retired or are retiring and finished their career. But they're saying that one of the main reasons is the prohibitive effect of what they're seeing. I mean, it prohibits me, to be honest, sometimes, because every UK doctor, I've watched them be struck off and suspended one after the other. The Sarah Myhills, the Jane Donagans, Anne McCloskeys, Mohammed Adil. The sad case of one of my colleagues, Dr. Ahmed Malik, an ankle surgeon, exemplary professional career, and he's been suspended from all of his roles for various different spurious reasons. And the guy's an absolute gentleman, and he's handed his license in to avoid all of the crap that I'm about to face. So, I mean, they wrote a lovely letter. James,
I get it, Dave, because I was attacked early. My suspension hearing was in September 2021. And I didn't just attack the gene jabs. I said there was no evidence for lockdowns, mask mandates. I talked about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, vitamin D, zinc, one of the posts. So I don't know if you saw, but it's on my Substack. You can see the 10. I had 2 memes in there that they considered so offensive that it required immediate action powers for public protection. But I knew it was a joke and a farce at the time. And so I went and I gave my testimony. I mentioned things like informed consent. I laid it out then that it was a genetic therapy and that it had no long-term safety data, all of that stuff. They didn't listen. I provided evidence. They didn't care. They just said, you breached the gag order and that's good enough for us. You're done. And I thought, okay, I'll have some fun with this. I sued them in the Supreme Court of New South Wales, and representing myself, without a lawyer. And but I've showed in the law that they were acting beyond their powers. They were acting ultra vires, that they weren't following the very processes and laws from which they derived their powers, and they dropped my suspension. But I couldn't go back to, as an anaesthetist, I couldn't go back. My hospital still had jab mandates. And I thought my colleagues were all bloody mad, so nothing. So I withdrew from practice early after I saw what was coming in with COVID, with the, do not resuscitate orders and the intubation drills that they were doing. And something didn't sit right, and I relinquished all my lists as a visiting medical officer. I was senior specialist in anesthesia and critical care. So I was senior staff. I could have been on the medical council myself. And yet maybe that's why they chose me to come after. But so ever since then, I've been fully engaged in this fight. And then they left me alone until sort of last year. And then another anonymous complaint sprung up, and they said, oh, they don't like what you're posting on Twitter and Substack. And I couldn't believe that the Health Commission, which is really the prosecutors were the government, the politicians of the government. This is political. It's not medical, I've said, they said, you must respond to this. And I went, okay. So I was thankful there's a group here called AMPS, the Australian Medical Professional Society. It's like an alternative medical union that supports deplorables like myself and deplorable nurses. And basically I said, look, under our thing, if you follow the code of practice, you're protected. And the code of practice, what does it talk about? Informed consent, It talks about ethics in medical trials. And I mentioned how our own health minister said Australia's engaged in one of the world's largest medical trials. And so I just gave them back the code, and they dropped it. But I actually voluntarily chose not to renew my registration this year because I didn't want a target on my back, and I wanted to continue to speak out and do what I'm doing. So I'm a full-time deplorable now, and I'll tell you, my life's getting better and better. Honestly, I'm meant to be getting, I don't know, but I know doctors under attack get very stressed, and I think there's been 15 doctors in Australia who have committed suicide from the attacks. It has real consequences, the attacks of these unlawful attacks, these unethical attacks by the regulators. But the way I cope with it is I thought, well, I could be wrong, but I'm not confused. And the Lighthouse Declaration was all about basic ethics. There was nothing controversial in it. And yet we've got, I think one of our providers here is blocking the website as malicious. And it's talking about informed consent, and bodily autonomy. And so we're in a world now where these things are under attack. And for me, it's time, God bless you that you're speaking out. That's enough about me. Tell me what's happening with you, Dave.
I agree with everything you said, Paul. I mean, the regulators, I keep asking the question, what is your role here? Who's regulating the regulators? Because, I've given them prima facie evidence of the abuse and bullying and harassment I've had for the last 3 years, the stress I've endured from it all. Yet they're charging me with bullying, harassment and incitement, which is utterly, if it wasn't so serious, it would be comical, reading the statements from the complainants. And it's just, I can't get my head around it really. And, the whole process has been, the first complaint went in 18 months ago to the day pretty much. And they've given me a hearing in October. And they told me, like I say, 15 days. Now, if I pull my license out, they're still going to drag my name through the mud. Back in the day, they asked me as part of the process.
Is that because they want to use you? Well, let's be honest. You're relatively young, you're good looking, and they want to smash you through, so that anyone else.
I've got a backup career anyway as a Dr. Kildare.
But if anyone who's thinking of joining you, basically, it's why Julian Assange is still in prison. It's to try to frighten other people from coming up. They're trying to control us with fear. But I just want to read this out. So you're a GP. You're from Cornwall, and you got first class honours in 2008. Is that correct?
I did, yeah.
2004, you've biomedical science degrees, reading immunology, virology, microbiology, medical statistics, and you've published a paper on angiogenesis. Yeah,
you've done it sounds like this is an anti-vaxxer in training. This is what they go through. All these degrees.
I've got that on my ass. Actually, I was going to take an ointment for it, but there's going on, you're not just a nobody. You're a significant asset to the medical establishment of England, and yet they're willing to just cast you out because you're doing what we want doctors to do.
Yeah, I'm in a very. Sorry, there's a little lag. Apologies if I'm.
Oh, sorry. I'm just saying, from ordinary people out there, not doctors. All we want from our doctors is the truth. Just tell us the truth. We need someone in society who'll sit us down and going, you're fat, mate, or you've got cancer, or if you don't do this, you'll have diabetes. We need someone who just tells us the truth, and they're stealing that from us. Mm-hmm. Now the doctors are lying because they're scared of our jobs. we're losing our doctors. We are the losers in this, as well as yourself, sir.
Well, this is what I've been calling out. I mean, like Paul said at the beginning, none of those points are debatable, are they? The whole informed consent, bodily autonomy, lockdowns. I mean, who thought of lockdowns for this? In the UK, they announced lockdown the first day when they downgraded the disease from high consequence to low consequence. But I'll give you an example. I mean, down in Cornwall, I mean, they talk and preach about patient safety and safe and effective, but the surgeries down here, we're massively understaffed. There's always 10 or 15 jobs being advertised all the time whenever you check the vacancies. And I've applied for a few jobs, and I get to an interview stage, the interviews go well, and then I get told that they've Googled me. And it's, I think one of the surgeries said that it was immediately apparent that I was a rabid anti-vaxxer, which is quite a bizarre phrase to use. There was another surgery that said we'd rather have no doctor at all than have Dr. Cartman working with us. He's not a good fit for the surgery. Another one said that we've got a pro-vaccine ethos and we don't believe his values align with this surgery. I've even been let go by a surgery that was absolutely desperate for staff. Because I retweeted an Andrew Tate video talking about COVID back 10 months ago. So they really do dig the dirt. They skip over all that data and statistics that I post day in, day out, and research. And this is affecting patient care directly, suppressing truth. The amount of patients, I've done a 3-month stint back in the NHS and ran out the door a couple of Mondays ago after I posted that video that's gone viral, because it was just unsafe. I'm having to see complex adult mental health and social issues in a 10-minute window in the UK, and you question it and you're told you're unresilient. You know what you signed up for when you became a GP, that stiff upper lip approach that we're supposed to have. You don't have a lunch break. You have to self-catheterize some days. It's that bad. And just, it's absolutely nuts. I mean, your hour's break is going out into the community doing home visits in primary care. So, and you've got crisps hanging out your mouth when you see the patient. So, I mean, the patient safety.
Can I just back up a bit? I'm really interested in what drew you to being a doctor. There's what was it about being a doctor? So even if it's the myth of the doctor, and then when did the myth meet up with the reality?
Well, the reason I became a doctor is for the same reason hopefully everyone else did, is to help people, help humankind get better from their illness, and with a holistic approach. And I became a GP because I thought that fitted my ethos more than any of the other specialities, because you've got this wider lens on the patient. And when you do your MRCGP, which is the exam for general practice in the UK, the whole thing's built around in a consultation, letting the patient speak freely for a couple of minutes and then really honing in on the context of their illness. So you'd look at the biopsychosocial aspects of what they were presenting with. So it wasn't just a bad back and give a painkiller, but you'd see how that was impacting their ability to work, their carer position if they were caring for a third party, and social situation, and also address the ideas, concerns and expectations of your patient. Now you exit your exam with this polished performance that you're supposed to do in every consult 40 times a day. And in the end, it's like, you got chest pain. Where does it go? It's not this. You're asking closed questions, and they drill it straight out of you. And in doing so, and keeping doctors so busy, that's the only excuse I've got for the UK doctors and the world's doctors, is you're just absolutely battered day in, day out, doing 3 people's work. Like I say, I make a joke about self-catheterization, but there have been times when it's come close. You just go from patient to patient, and your empathy's gone. You certainly don't want to go home and start reading the Lancet Journal or the JAMA about all the COVID stuff. You just stick the BBC on and have a glass of wine and relax, or try and relax for the next day's carnage. And that's a problem. The reason I've researched so much is because I've had that time on my hands, because I've stepped away. The original reason I stepped away from being a doctor is because they told me, in a coffee meeting setting, that they weren't going to be vaccinating children at the surgery that I worked at. That said, 12 to 17-year-olds. They made a promise. The very next day, they advertised on the website that they were sending staff down to the surgery next door, deploying staff to give it to the 12 to 17-year-olds, whilst telling me they wouldn't have their own 12 to 17-year-olds jabbed. Like I say, we've got doctors in the UK at the moment giving jabs that are out of date, that they won't receive themselves, coercing patients to have the jab. I saw somebody only last week that before I quit, on the day I quit, that went in for his flu jab. Fair enough, he'd made the decision to take the flu jab, but they said you can't have the flu jab unless you have the COVID jab. And it's just, all of this is just mad. So to go back to the original question, it's I took on the role of a doctor so I could practice holistic care that's been battered out of me since the day I qualified, really.
And what was the thing that first woke you up about, and it started your journey to here, where you'd started to speak out? Was there one moment that really changed your life?
There was a eureka moment. I don't know if you know, I took the poison dart myself. I don't know if you researched that. I was stupid enough myself to take 2. And that was heavy coercion. And, I feel like a ticking time bomb. So, it's utterly nuts, really. But it came about because I was lied to about a friend's death that was alleged to be COVID-19, and I didn't know any better. It was plastered across the tabloids. My best friend dies of COVID.
And that's because you're working so hard and fast. You don't have, you just
yeah. And then it was almost like
it
was a tribute to her, Michael. Really, she had a flu-like illness. They rammed her something up her nose, told her it's COVID, vented, and never to be seen again. 2 weeks later, pneumothorax. I think the actual cause of death was undiscovered cellulitis when you see the death certificate, but not an antibiotic passed through a vein, but I'm sure a lot of midazolam, diamorph, and she had bilateral pneumothoraxes, they de-intubated her twice, etc. So that all went on, and I thought she had COVID, so I went down the vac centre as a tribute and took the jab, completely reflex decision. And the second one was because of the fact that I'd been chased around with a syringe pretty much for 10 weeks, and they just got me on a bad day. I keep describing it. I was literally in front of a computer with 2 phones on the go, screen messages pinging. I was 40 patients in. It's only about 2:00 in the afternoon, and someone said, you need to go and get your vaccine. And I just at that point I just went, just do it.
It was unbelievable.
You can say okay.
But going back to what woke me up, it was deaths of patients. Literally, there was a week where 3 patients were significantly affected. So we had 2 deaths in 40-year-old women with children. I know 40. I saw one on the notes, but I actually had to speak to the second one because I had to do the bereavement call to the surviving spouse and offer condolences. And so both died within their mid-40s with FIT, vaccine-induced thrombocytic thrombocytopenia. So it wasn't Dave Cartland's wacky conspiracy theory. These were coroner, post-mortem decisions, AstraZeneca, COVID-19 in both cases. And then the same day, the same week, should I say, as the second one came in, we got a phone call from the local neurosurgical unit saying, "Oh, doc, we've got one of your patients, 41-year-old male, he's collapsed, cerebral venous thrombosis." So I looked on his notes as I started to do. I just started to see a few, nuggets that people were being harmed. And it was about the booster time that this was happening, second and third. I didn't see much after the first. It really did take off after the booster. But this is the first time I got called an anti-vaxxer because I said to the neurosurgeon, he had his AstraZeneca jab yesterday, and today he's having his cerebral venous thrombosis treated by yourselves. And he went, "Oh, Dr. Cartland, you're not one of those anti-vaxxers, are you?" He said it's because of his maxillary sinus inflammation that caused his brain clot the day after a COVID jab. I've had people that have had strokes the day after the Moderna jab, and they're told they've got long COVID that caused their stroke in their 30s, so literally within the day of the vaccine. Guillain-Barré within a week of the vaccine. It's asymptomatic long COVID, Dr. Cartland. So really what woke me up, it was a collection of cases of death, clots. We had a nursing home opposite, and they were vaccinated all over a weekend. I think there were about 8 clots out of 40 residents within a very short amount of time. And a quarter of people developing unprovoked DVTs. Well, they were provoked by the AstraZeneca jab, but alleged unprovoked with no risk factors. And so no one was putting the 2 and 2 together. And, there was never any time to study or read. There were no meetings, there were no audits, nothing was going on. So I was jumping up and down saying to the guys at my surgery, look, everyone who's getting this alleged COVID, they've all had 3 jabs to stop them getting COVID. All these hospitalizations with COVID, it's the fully vaccinated that are getting COVID all the time, or alleged COVID. And it just kept stacking up, and I had every excuse under the sun. Like it's those damned anti-vaxxers that don't go and get tested. So it's confirmation bias because and so I did an audit of the unvaccinated, and none of them were getting COVID. So right back at you. So there's every excuse under the sun to not do audits. I asked the practice manager, re-auditing blood clots, venous thromboembolism. No one was interested.
Well, you're a statistical person, aren't you? You've done statistics. But how are you managing to stay sane in that time? Because the madness swirls around you. It can really push you to even question your own sanity. That's why we hang out. We hang out in stuff like this just to stay sane.
Yeah, I'm more than happy. I keep saying, half of my colleagues sit me down. I was expecting at some point during the process to have some sort of senior figure sit me down and say, look, you fell down some rabbit holes here, Dave. Let me put my senior arm around you. Instead, my appraiser only 2 years ago told me that, fair play for speaking out, Dave. He argued till he was blue in the face that vaccines save millions of lives and masks work and lockdowns work and millions of people died of COVID. He just wasn't having it. At the very end, he wrote a lovely piece in my appraisal under the probity integrity section, which was quite interesting. And he said, essentially paraphrasing, fair play for speaking out. It should be encouraged if you've got safety concerns. However, you work in the NHS, and it was really disturbing phrase he used. He said, you need to follow consensus opinion at all times. And what you should have really done is kept your head down and shrugged your shoulders. Now we're talking patient safety. What sort of senior doctor in their right mind would advise a young prodigy of medicine to keep his head down and shrug his shoulders when it comes to safety? So it's nothing makes sense. I'm absolutely begging people to show me that they took informed consent from a patient, that lockdowns worked. I mean, I'm seeing the impact of lockdowns in the 3-month stint I've just done in this local surgery, and it's all teenagers as predicted. And that was my concern. So you're locking down healthy people.
What are you seeing with the teenagers?
Oh, horrendous, intractable, self-harming, cutting mainly. Depression, anxiety. People are agoraphobic now. They become OCD. Cleanliness, washing their hands, scrubbing their hands, keeping distance even now from their friends. And these are kids that we were getting to hide their faces from each other, their emotions hidden. Not touch each other because their friends were a germ factory that could kill them. Social distancing, absolutely incredible. And this was a healthy young cohort. And if any doctor can explain the nuances of how that was ever a good idea, I'm more than happy to listen. Keep saying more than happy to be wrong. Sit me down. Show me the error. Give me the data. But I know I've not seen any data apart from modelling data from bought and paid for organisations like the Imperial. And Neil Ferguson's a guy, I don't know if you've heard of him over there, but he's just a charlatan. Every modelling that he's done on an infectious disease in the past has been wildly over exaggerated and just fraudulent, whether it's swine flu or anything else. And they give the job. I don't know what you have to do to become sacked from your role, but this guy's been, tasked with the job of modelling the COVID pandemic. And it's just fraud, simple as that. And you look at the who backs the Imperial College, and the same old names pop up, don't they, without naming names.
Mm-hmm. It's corruption. It's corruption. It's fraud. If you were aware, it was pretty obvious that the lockdowns and the mask mandates and the fear campaign and propaganda fear campaign was going to cause a lot of harm, psychological harm, and physical harm. And I remember seeing a paper showing that babies born during lockdowns from Rhode Island had dramatically lower IQs from being around masks. It was pretty obvious, that children need to be able to see the face to learn language, to learn emotions, especially kids on the spectrum. My son's on the spectrum, so it was even if you don't have that, not being able to see that will affect language development, IQ points. But no one wanted to see the data. The data was there. But no one wanted to listen. It was like, but I get the amount of coercion that everyone was under. I remember at one stage, I never wavered in my beliefs, but the propaganda was so thick, I found myself self-soothing sometimes, but safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, and I thought, wow, that works. You get the strange peace over you. And I realized, wow, they're really messing with our minds, and I was appalled at everything that happened since 2020. But by March of 2020, I saw the same video that Zev Zelenko saw, MedCram episode, I think it was 34, that showed zinc and zinc ionophores, hydroxychloroquine. And so I told all my colleagues back in March of 2020, look, this is what you have to do. You don't have to be afraid. I told everyone who would listen, guys, vitamin D, zinc, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin. This is how early treatment. Treat on first symptoms. It can. No one needs to die. No one needs to die from this. And but I didn't have a reach. I wasn't in a role where I could write exemptions. We have colleague Mark Hobart here, who back in 2021 also got suspended down in Victoria for writing vaccine exemptions. Dennis Borsos, another GP down. So when people heard that he was writing exemptions, people came from all over the state to to
Over 300 miles away.
you know, and he
It's criminal, isn't it, writing an exemption for somebody who doesn't want a medical treatment? You know, I always use the example of Jehovah's Witnesses because I was an A&E doctor before I was a GP. You know, I've had to watch 2 Jehovah's Witnesses die in a district general in a car accident because they have a ban that says, you know, in advance they do not want blood products. And so whatever happened to that concept of informed consent, particularly when the Pfizer have got no data to show that it doesn't stop transmission. Likewise, and I could never get my head around the fact that if your vaccine works and your masks work, it doesn't matter what the hell I do. If your vaccine works, you're protected, aren't you? So what's the nurse next to you sneezing in your face got to do with it who hasn't got a vaccine? I was took out of a hospital recently, a really packed out unit, because they said masks are back in, mandating masks. And I said, I'm not putting one on. I've got asthma. It's a really hot day. Here's my negative test, which I had to go through the charade of doing. And she said, well, you know, it could be a false negative. I said, are you serious? Well, you're making us do tests every day and it's negative and you don't believe it. And anyway, they suspended me for a Wednesday and a Friday, but let me work on a Thursday because COVID only attacks you in the urgent care centre and not in the building next door. It only attacks you if you've got a Scotch egg and some chips in your hand rather than just a Scotch egg. We had these ridiculous rules. I've been told to wear a muddy mask.
What's that about? We're from Melbourne. I'm from Melbourne.
I remember walking through a pub though, and then they said, you've got to put a mask on, sir. And I said, well, I haven't got one. And I went and found this really disgusting mud-covered mask that was in my footwear just so I could go and meet the person I was meeting in Cornwall. So I put this disgusting mask on. God knows what germs I contracted. And then she said, oh, you're dining with us today, sir. You can remove your mask. There's nonsense like this. You know, there are people down sunbathing on the Cornish beaches with masks, so you could tell because they got the white marks where the sun had missed the face. Swimming in the sea with the masks on. It's just insanity. Mass formations.
Yeah.
Like simple as that.
Yeah, it is.
I started on masks because at first I was very fearful. I was fearful before anyone was fearful. I was trialing full face elastomeric masks in the operating theatre in January of 2020. I was going, guys, we have to get our head around this. If there is a dangerous respiratory airborne pathogen, we need to do it properly. And they didn't have enough respirators. And then when I said, well, how do we know the respirators work? The doctors and nurses in North Italy are still getting sick and they've got good quality PPE. So maybe it's not working. So I asked them to do industrial fit testing, as if there was a dangerous respiratory pathogen. And that was fascinating because what we discovered was of the brands that the hospital, New South Wales Health stocked, there was some that all the options wouldn't fit someone's face. There was just gaps there and they were just entrain air and it just didn't work. And I was aware of the research around masks before COVID and flu vaccine, which because maybe 7 years ago, they put up a sign on the operating theatre door saying, you have to get this year's flu vax, otherwise you have to wear a mask around patients for the next 12 months. And I remember going, that sounds like bullshit. And I went and looked at the Cochrane review on influenza vaccines and thought, that doesn't look like a very effective therapy. Look at the number needed to treat. It's pretty useless. And then I looked at the research on masks, even back then, and it didn't support it. So at the time, I could make them see sense because they still had a little bit of evidence-based medicine. They still had a bit of a, anesthesia is a lot like being a pilot. You know, you have. It was a culture of safety. It was always because you don't generally cure someone by giving them anesthetic. You just allow the surgery and the procedures that are curative. So everything was about eliminating safety risks, and that was always the case, you know. And they tolerated evidence-based medicine up until 2020, and then I saw a flip. All of a sudden, I was doing exactly what I've always done, just looking at the research, saying how we can do things better, identifying risks, and suddenly someone like me wasn't appreciated. I was outright attacked. That's why I withdrew from practice so early, because I knew there was a treatment. No one could hear me. It was almost like I would say this, you know, ivermectin, vitamin D, and it would just like wash over them like they were covered, like wearing a raincoat in the shower. They just couldn't hear it. And I remember in May of 2020, I went to a birthday party and I told So May 2021, everyone, have you heard of ivermectin? Not one person had heard of it. And I remember telling everyone about it. So I was an early treater. I started with the masks and thinking, no, because I lived and breathed, I slept masks and airways and seals, and I could see, just the slightest gap, and it was going to completely make it useless. And so to me, it was just following the evidence. I thought I could be wrong, but I'm not confused. It doesn't make sense. First principle thinking, past research. And I'm still like that, but sometimes you've got to, you think the world's gone mad. I could have, maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed to me like the world had gone mad. And people are catching up though, but not fast enough given the WHO and the March of Tyranny.
Can I just ask a question about that? Because you're so accomplished, Dr. Cartland, in what you've done. It's such an investment of your life and time to get to where you are. I know you're a father, so you've got family, and most families are really like, well, I'm Welsh, and so I know I was born in North Wales. I know a UK family, to have a doctor in the family is like, oh, we've got a doctor in the family. It's a big status thing. For you to actually take on and do the stance you're doing, are you getting support? Do you feel like you're teaching your children, like, I'm doing this because of this? You know what I mean? I'm just interested because the courage it takes to stand by your principles in this time. There's a very famous image of a man who's got his arms crossed when everyone else is giving the Nazi salute. And everybody basically goes, oh, that's me. But it's bullshit. Most of them are doing the Nazi salute. But you've got your arms crossed. So what are the effects on your life and in yourself? Are you weary of it, or are you inspired by your own decision?
Yeah, that's a big question. Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, I'm a father of 4. I'm a Christian, a real heathen of a character, really. And I just look at my kids. I mean, my two older kids are slowly getting on board now. They're hearing and seeing things for their own selves now that people are getting ill around them, and so they're slowly warming to me. But it was a bit of a kind of disownership to start with. But my younger 2 are only the ones down in Cornwall, 6 and 4. 7 and 5 actually after Christmas, forgetting their ages now. But I just look them in the eyes, and this is what I say to my colleagues, look your children in the eyes and think about your grandchildren here. And they're going to ask you in 20 years what you did for them to stop this nonsense. And at least I can say publicly that I've done something, contributed something, even if it's like a minuscule percent. But yeah, it's took its toll. I'll be honest with you. It comes in waves. I have good days, I have bad days. It's the trolling on the internet. I find it hard not to defend myself. If somebody's slating me or my family, it gets vicious at times on the internet. It's a bit of a cesspit, is X, even with that post Elon Musk, really. And it does take its toll. I've reached out at times to colleagues and friends that are the professional organisations, and they're just not listening. They just say, you're wrong on this, Dave. We don't see any mental health, but I have some sertraline anyway, which I don't take. But yeah, I've found my people, let's say. So I found my people in the Christian circle. And we connect and we pray together. I've got really good people watching my back, and all the doctors across the world. Really, we've all found each other, haven't we, through various podcasts, and the American doctors have linked up with there's so few of us, but we're spawning, and if I had my time again, I always get asked this question, would you do it any differently? No, I wouldn't, because, it's a professional obligation. It's not a choice. You sign up to an oath, you sign up to a code of practice, as Paul was saying earlier. It's not an opt-in, opt-out. It's what you sign up for. So people say, would you have stayed stum? No, I wouldn't. Of course not. It's about patient safety. It's about ethics. It's about, doing the job you signed up for. And I keep asking my colleagues who are silent to do that with their children, look them in the eye. Reconsider their pensions having priority over their children's future, and just reconsider. Just stick to facts. That's all you can do. You can't be. I mean, they don't listen, do they? You've been through the regulator, Paul, so and I don't think they listen to me. I've handed them prima facie evidence of the case being the opposite way around, but they're still ignoring it.
Nothing to do with evidence anymore.
Yeah, I think the process is designed to break. To be honest, it's designed to break you and prohibit others, and They've had a good crack at doing it, but at the same time,
it's to do with compliance now and obedience. I mean, we're in communist times. This is how it is. I mean, let's not forget that pre-war with the Nazis. It was the doctors that were euthanizing all the disabled kids and anyone else that the Nazis didn't like.
It's history repeating itself, isn't it?
Yeah, they say it doesn't repeat; it rhymes, and this is what we're seeing. And what I've found, because I've interviewed sometimes with Paul, sometimes by myself, all these doctors, and there's not many of them, but we have, and they're all down to earth. They're all level-headed. They're all critical thinkers. Some of them are Christians, some of them aren't. There's we interviewed one from Belgium, I think. She's an atheist, but she just saw it. Critical thinking going, doesn't make sense. And the Hippocratic Oath means something to them. They've given their life to it. That's what it means. Do no harm. And that's how they've built their identity upon that. And they can't corrupt that. And so, and that's the great tragedy of our times, because they will talk about building back trust, but you can't, because you portrayed something that we thought you were incapable of betraying. And so it's a real issue. Yeah.
It's another reminder I give to the GMC. There is a duty of candor, it's called, in the GMC's practice code. And when you make a mistake, put your hands up and admit it. And that's reason is to rebuild the trust. And the other thing I was going to say is that I've had the privilege of doing 2 degrees, a science degree and a medicine degree, and they're worlds apart. So when I did my biomedical sciences degree, it taught me to do all those things, to critically appraise, to question. Even a paper that's published, there are faults in it and flaws that you can tease out. Sometimes the conclusions don't even match the results in some cases. So don't take it as gospel that the Journal of Nature or the BMJ have posted it. So it teaches you that as soon as you do your medical degree, you then become a sort of groupthink, herd mentality. In fact, the medical degree actually selects people actively for that, people who've followed the crowd and people who've conformed to things, and the teaching's didactic. It is literally lecture theatres. This is the science, this is the medicine. It's even called medicine, drugs, and there's no, I've had 0 teaching on nutrition, 0 teaching on holistic care, supplements, immunization. I got 0, other than don't speak out against it, otherwise you'll become Andrew Wakefield.
Yeah, that's what Dr. William Bay here told us. He reminded me of him.
Safe and effective, that's it. And this is what you get at the end of medical school. You get these law-abiding, non-critically thinking sheep. I don't know how I snap myself out of that, but every day at work, they try and beat you down to the point where you just haven't got the energy to critically think. And I think that's the problem in a lot of cases, that not only are they not taught critical thinking skills, but they're just battered. And that's my only defense of the doctors, and that's all they're going to get out of me. That they're not.
Can I ask you a Christian question though? We're facing, a lot of people early on have thought this was a spiritual war. I was in all the big marches in Melbourne, and I was amazed by how many people were carrying the crucifix. They were saying the Lord's Prayer over loudspeakers, and suddenly being extrovertly Christian was acceptable. It was really amazing. And yet the churches were all closed and the priests were missing. So it was like the people themselves were reigniting Christianity. And what I was thinking was, what we've been through now, we've been through over the last 2,000 years, we've been through that time and time again, where they've come in with these attacks, exactly what they're doing now. And yet these proverbs from a man who may or may not have existed have come through. Turn the other cheek, don't do it to others, treat others as you would treat yourself. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing now, and I'm sure you'll forgive me. Don't you think that's quite remarkable of why we've kept these proverbs and why we still cherish them after all this time? Even in these dark times, we still do. I just wondered if they're handed down by stronger people like you, like a baton through history. Keep this, you'll need it.
I mean, there is a palpable spiritual battle, isn't it? And whether you're an atheist or you're a Christian, you can feel that there's a good and evil element to this. And for me, I was an atheist all through medical school. I used to debate Muslims. I used to debate.
Oh, really?
thinking they were crazy. But I actually went about researching the Bible myself as a book of fact, and I tried to debunk it actually to get my brother to leave a church that he joined. Thought he joined a cult, and I looked at it as a book of facts, and let's debunk all of this whole conspiracy theory. And I did a game of what we call prophetic bingo. So I went through biblical prophecy and what's come true and what's not come true. Well, there was a few remaining things yet to come true in the New Testament, and we're seeing that play out now. So in Romans 1, for example, it talks about, when the world gives up on God, God will give people over for a period over to a reprobate mind or a depraved, debased mind in different translations. You look at 2 Timothy 3, which is the translation that talks about the end times generation. And if you're not describing Generation Z in 2 Timothy 3, proud blasphemers, lovers of themselves rather than lovers of God. I only went to a pub the other day, and everyone's taking pictures of their food and themselves and on their phones, and that's 2 Timothy 3, and it actually goes so far as to COVID times. 2 Thessalonians 2, it talks about a grand delusion, a strong delusion that will be imparted upon the populace, and it actually says the word pharmakia in the Greek translation. Pharmakia, around pharmacology, drugs. And it says it 3 times in the book of Revelation too, just for good measure. So, for me, it was almost like ticking off those boxes and then reading about this wonderful person called Jesus. And I read the Bible. And to even say the name now, I just think I wouldn't have said that 4 years ago on a live interview. But I'm proud to be a Christian now. So.
You remind me very much of William Bay. He's a doctor over here, one of the young doctors. He actually came out and he's a big Christian now. He's been attacked savagely. And we've got 832 though, which is I see it's on my t-shirt, which because we wanted a symbol to unite the movement. That didn't matter which which faction you're in, and it's from John 832. The truth shall make you free. And it was a girl called Ariana gave it to us. We've got flags with it now. But it's really easy to spread because the other side doesn't know what it is. And when they go, what's 832? You just go Google it. And it sounds funny, but when they read it themselves, their shields are down and it hits them hard. They've called me up and said, wow, they punched me in the face. Well, if we tell them their shields are already up, it just bounces off. And that's the interesting thing. I don't know if you're finding it there, but over here, especially in the last year or so, we're finding that the doctors and the scientists like yourself have won the science. It's ours. They don't say follow science anymore because it leads to us. But it's bouncing off people's heads, which makes me think that there's something else that they want, and it's not the truth. It's either safety or, they're completely lost. Are you seeing that over there, or are people actually listening more to the facts?
I can tell you in the last 3 years, I've not had a doctor give me 2 minutes of their time. That's why I get quite defensive. And at the start of interviews, I give my credentials like you did for me today. But, they just don't want to know. I've been in coffee rooms with, published data from very early on with the myocarditis. All the doctors and physios stood up. That one pushed me and told me, don't want to listen to your conspiracy theories. It was a Journal of American Medical Association article on myocarditis, for example. So I don't know. I mean, people ask me why the doctor's quiet, why are they not receiving this data that, like you say, the science is one now. It's beyond all reasonable doubt. The vaccine injuries and deaths are rolling in incessantly now, and if you're denying vaccine injury now as a rare, minuscule, expected adverse event from rolling out a drug on the whole population, then you got your head in the sand, unfortunately. And you got to remember, these poor people. Well, I say poor people; they're not poor people at this point. There's no excuse. These people. Not only have they been jabbed up to the eyeballs themselves, so they don't want people like Paul and myself putting a mirror up to themselves saying, this is what spike protein does to your body. Secondly, they've jabbed everything that's got a pulse, including pregnant women and children now. So, if that's acceptable to you, you shouldn't be practicing medicine, I'm afraid. And no one can explain to me why we jab pregnant women. No one can tell me why we jabbed up down to 6-month-olds at one point, and then it went back up to 5, like that was any better, 5 years of age. And still to this day, they're using this guise of jab your 5-year-old to protect your granny or anyone immunosuppressed.
They're still saying that.
It's still saying that, yeah. The guidance still in the UK is still
that is
young people can still have a jab. It's disgusting.
I asked over here because I've done a lot of interviews, and I love asking the older people, especially the older women, would you want the kids touched to protect you? And they're all like, no, we've had our lives. Don't touch the kids. Leave the kids alone. Forget about us. It goes against human nature itself.
Not only is it wholly abhorrent, but it's also, as I said earlier, if your vaccine works, you don't have to worry about what anyone else is doing. You're protected, aren't you, from your 17 shots? So just move on. let everyone know.
Dr. Pace says if the first one didn't work, why would you take the second? And if the first one worked, why would you take the second? And the first one didn't work, why would you take the second?
Well, it's Albert Einstein, isn't it? He said the definition of insanity, isn't it, is to do something once, it doesn't work, and you keep doing it over and over.
Yeah.
So, to paraphrase a good man, Albert.
Sorry, Paul, what were you saying?
Injecting the children, to me, that was, and the pregnant women, to me, I'd love to stand down. I've been doing this for a while now, but I can't, because they're still injecting the children. They're still injecting pregnant women. And it was a tweet to my health minister in 2021 that probably drew fire to me. And it was a day that 24,000 school kids were being rounded up at the Sydney arena to get injected. And I was furious because I could only see harm. I couldn't see any benefit because the kids were not at risk. And I was terrified that this was going to permanently change their immune systems in a way that could not be undone and would lead to great harm. And I still believe that, and I'm still terrified of it. And it's at least, really, they have to stop giving these shots. They have to stop using this platform, because it's not just this payload; it's the whole platform, the whole weapon system that has to be withdrawn. But there is so much money, there is so much propaganda, there is so much pollution that we're still fighting, and now they want to pretend like it's still all okay, still safe and effective, so that when the pandemic treaty comes by default in May this year, that they will be able to do what they did again and be able to censor and block and force us. So to me, as much as I'd like to think, yes, there's so many more of us now who are waking up. People are not going to get the shot. The battle is still very much on. But the funny thing is, like Michael's saying, data hasn't worked. So we have to use art. We have to use storytelling. We have to use music. We have to use comedy. I almost feel like I might as well do interpretive dance to the doctor, because no, I'm not.
Normally a wet fish around the face helps, actually, just to wake them up.
We're in Cornwall.
It does come down to the fact. It's really basic stuff. We talked about how evidence-based medicine left the building, and how ethics has left the building. But we use pregnancy as an example. Pregnancy. Anyone who was pregnant was kicked out of the trial. Pfizer trial, Moderna, and AstraZeneca. So to then say in January, when they started rolling this out on real-life human pregnant women, that they were clinical trial participants, end of story, you were treating pregnant women as lab rats. But then not only that, the obstetricians and even the Royal College of Obs and Gynae were saying that this jab is 100% safe in pregnancy with no preceding preclinical rollout data. It's not difficult, this here. Don't lie to your patients. And I've called one of them out, and one of the complainants to the GP is a very prominent jab pusher in pregnancy. I don't understand. I'm just begging them. I did a video that went viral recently that said, can you show me the pre-rollout safety data in case I missed it? And the tumbleweeds flew on past me. And likewise, children were excluded from clinical trials. I did an interview where I'm holding up the trial data that was post-marketing, where I think 274 women got pregnant during the trial. And obviously, birds and the bees and all that. And of those 274 women, they surveyed them on severe adverse events. Well, half of them pretty much had an adverse event, and half of the half, so a quarter, had a severe adverse event that warranted an admission to an A&E or to see their GP. A quarter of pregnant women, if that's not a safety signal in a small number. And then they looked at fetal outcomes. They only followed up 32 women out of the 274 documented in this Pfizer document, which are fully referenced. And it said that basically 5 women were left pregnant, and there were a small number. There was one live birth, and the rest were dead. 27 fetal deaths in and out of utero. Now, if that's not, firstly, the other kids could have all been living, but why not follow them up. It's not labour intensive to get 274 women, ring them up and say, how's your baby doing? It's not difficult, but again, what is sinister in its silence? And so I posted this interview where I'm holding the documents up, references below, posted it to LinkedIn, got suspended permanently for spreading dangerous COVID misinformation permanently. They've rejected my appeal recently. So this is the world we're living in now. Censorship.
We're censored now. Even on Twitter now, we're getting censored. We have to go because there's another show coming on. But listen, if you're ever free, we'd love to have you back for a longer conversation. You two are great together. It's great to get doctors together. And even though I already understand about a third of what you're saying, it's coming on. But God bless you, mate. I tell you, it's amazing what you're doing. You've got a huge following over here. There's a lot of people who really admire what you're doing, and you're doing God's work. You simply are. I know it's tough. It's really tough, but
no, thanks for saying that, Paul. If you can contact me and give me some tips on how to fight the battle with GMC by using their guidance against me, that's a tactic that I want to really use. So,
find it on Twitter.
Having me both.
Yeah.
And
stay strong, brother.
Have some fun with it, because you're in the right, and you're making history, and your ancestors and humanity is watching. Don't have some fun.
I feel a bit sadistic, and that's exactly what I'm thinking. Apart from the stress of it all, I'm looking forward to it, toying with the GMC, have some fun with it. But anyway, I've got a good team behind me, and they're all working behind the scenes to make a robust case. So GMC are not going to come good out of this. God bless you both.
No worries. And if you know of any artists over there, we've already got two. We've got 2 English artists already on our culture thing. So if you know any others, any artists with the courage to speak freely with their art, get them in touch with us, and we'll start an art army. Maybe that'll help.
We'll do.
Take care. Great to meet you.
At Cartland David, if anyone wants to hunt me down, at Cartland David.
Yes. I already saw someone who said, I'm following Dave, so that's good. Follow Dave.
Yeah.
God bless you both. Thank you. Take
care. Same. Here we go. Here's Ben Antoniadis with 21st Century Usury Blues.
Got a whole lot of dough. Don't ask the tax man how much, maybe he don't know. Whoa. Every year they've been saying Bill Gates is the man. Well, I think it's obscene that he's just another bag man. Whoa, for the real kings and queens. Old man Rockefeller got a whole lot of bread. Some time ago they say it went to his daddy's head. Yeah. The love of money is the root of all evil. It's written in the Bible, and Lord, I'm a believer, of the truth in it. Scraping the bowl, begging for a dime. But there's billions doing it harder than me. I tell you that's a crime. Yeah. The rich get richer and the poor stay poor. You can't deny the system. That is the score. it's rotten to the core.